Did they really script the minutes?
So fun.
Oh, yes.
It's good to go.
Oh, yes.
Recording progress.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Audio might be different, but we're taking care of us.
And you don't want to be
Okay.
rude and interrupt
Okay.
them. And it's like, this
Okay,
is
so we're
something
gonna
we
get
talked
ready.
about months ago.
We're gonna start.
Okay.
For some reason, it's not saying recording in progress, but Ron says we're recording, so great.
Good.
Very good. Okay, welcome everyone to our September 12th, 2023, 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present in our executive management team. And we are joined this morning by Chris Davis. And we'll let you go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you. I provide copies of, and I'm sitting in today for Judge Jeffrey Smith. He has therapeutic court this morning, so I want to thank you for letting me sit in for him. But he had court at 9 o'clock this morning. So this document that hopefully everyone has a copy of is the interagency agreement between the Washington Traffic Safety Commission and Spokane County District Court. Essentially, it runs from the middle of 2023 to June, I believe, of 2025. The allocation is for $130,000 for treatment and prevention of DUI offenders in the DUI court. It would be funding urine analysis. Essentially, the goal of this grant or allocation of funds is to prevent the barriers that a lot of these lower income individuals have to affording the treatment obligations, and essentially to prevent recidivism, especially during the course of their case in therapeutic court. I talked to Judge Smith at length about this. He gave me a lot of good details. The fact that urine analysis, they adhere to the national best practices, which is 8 times a month. It comes out to $40 per test. That's the lowest that they were able to negotiate for the testing. So that's $320, and a lot of these people have to make a decision between whether they can put food on the table or whether they comply with the court's ordered testing. So this is essentially to break that barrier down and to make sure that these people are staying on the straight and narrow and not repeat offending while they're going through the treatment process. This is also to train staff as well as on the back end of things, drug and alcohol treatment, which is monitored by probation in the court. So this is really a critical grant that district court relies upon for their therapeutic courts. Any questions?
So since this is traffic safety commission, these are primarily, so these are DUIs?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
$260,000.
Yes, $130,000 per year. It comes out to roughly $260,000, which is unfortunately a little less than they've received in the past. I believe Judge Smith said typically it's around $300,000, but anything helps.
Including not drinking.
Absolutely.
Just saying.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
We've got the 3 attorney Chris's down
It's the trifecta.
Quorum is here, as they say.
Note the date and time. And the question is the world better?
Remains
Sure.
to be seen.
Exponentially.
Make sure you get everybody, listed correctly in the notes.
Judge Smith did want me to let you all know that if you had any specific questions about the therapeutic court or kind of the minutia of that, he's more than happy to brief you on that at a later time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
Okay, next, that's gonna take us to George Dahl.
Gonna break this Chris triangle here.
Yeah, you will.
Something feels off.
So bringing before you all today a recommendation for the 9% low-income housing tax credit. So this is a requirement that, a recommendation that the Washington State Low-Income Housing Finance Commission puts on the counties to say, rather than getting a bunch of different applications throughout the state, each county just prioritize one application that you feel would be most competitive. So so that's what we're looking at today. So Ron, if you don't mind just going to, let me see what slides. Go ahead and keep going. So we opened the application period in July. Let's go back one. Oh, heck, other way. There we go. Application period. So we opened this in July of this summer, closed it on August 4th. We used both the city of Spokane and Spokane County. We partnered together to make sure that we were reaching out to as many folks as possible, as well as participation in the Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium member meetings and making sure that everyone had awareness on this opportunity. Next slide, Ron. Members of the committee, the ad hoc committee, include Pam Parr with Spokane Housing Authority, Ben Stuckert with Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium, Richard Colton with the City of Spokane, and myself. So the four of us got together, took a look at the applications, and then made recommendations. The two applications we received were the next one, Ron. First from Catholic Housing Ventures. So this is kind of an expansion on some of the work that they've done over by Spokane Falls Community College. This one is kind of unique in that it's specifically attempting to serve Indigenous folks. So Commissioner Jordan, in your district there, the total project cost is estimated to be about $26 million for the 72 new units of affordable housing. And Catholic Charities has done a really good job of creating some partnerships with the Salish School and making sure that they've got both housing and education as part of this. The next application that we received came from SNAP, Spokane Neighborhood Action Partners. This one is located out in the Valley in Commissioner Kern's district. And this is 60 new units of affordable housing. It's located close to Centennial Middle School out there. The total project cost on that, about $24 million, 60 new units for aging place population. So the four of us got together, took a look at it, and made the recommendation based off the merits of the application that we advance the Catholic Housing Ventures. So we're on the next slide, please. That we advance the Catholic Housing Ventures application onto the Housing Finance Commission at Washington State. I did add just kind of the average scores from the four of us. So you can see that the Catholic Housing Ventures one scored higher than the SNAP request. I did want to know, and you in your application pack, or not your application, in your briefing packet, I included the letter from Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium that was suggesting or making the recommendation that we advance both of the applications, which is great, but also can potentially hurt our overall competitiveness because the state's really asking us to advance our most qualified applications. So that's the recommendation before you all, is that we advance to the Housing Finance Commission, Catholic Housing Ventures. There's no funding or anything that comes with this at this point. It's just a recommendation to allow Catholic Housing Ventures to submit their application to the Housing Finance Commission.
But this will lead to funding because they'll take those tax credits and be able to sell them, to be able to get money, to be able to build. And what I've heard from the industry, from a number of people in the industry, is that we continue to put Catholic Charities forward, which eliminates others in the market from competing and stuff. And so we then become, by default, locked into one provider and stuff. And so, is that a fair comment?
Yeah.
I just realized by saying that, I put you on the spot. I didn't mean to do that. Let me just own that comment, because I don't want to compromise you. But does the requirement say we have to put forward the best, or do we have to put forward one?
Yes, one.
One.
Yeah, and that the one that you put forward should be your best application.
Theoretically. But, from a community standpoint, if we have locked ourselves into one provider, we will always be held hostage to one provider, as opposed to being able to expand the number of providers and hopefully the number of units that we can ultimately build in this community. That's the other side of that conversation and stuff. So I just thought I'd share that with the board. It's not just, you got the highest score, yay, the community's going to win. No, not necessarily. Community doesn't win when you only have one provider. So just an observation.
And I will also mention that last year we did for the Spokane Housing Authority's Haifumian project that did get funded. So So yes, there's a lot of conversation about Catholic Charities seems to get the majority of these awards. But we did last year recommend Spokane Housing Authority. So we are aware of that and try and take as much bias out of the recommendation process as possible.
So when you do your scoring process, do you use like a rubric from the state? So that you know that likely it'll then score highly at the state, with the state's process?
So yes, and so we ask them to take a look at we provide the state scoring matrix and then ask them to score themselves using that matrix, which of course, scoring your own application is always going to do pretty well. But we also have our own internal scoring matrix that we use to try and kind of make sure that we've got the best application that we're advancing. So both.
And then I would ask, do you, I mean, because these serve different populations, are you looking at the population needs and how do you determine that?
Yeah, that's something that we definitely are looking at. When it comes to these development projects, the need and the population is really important. However, we also have so much need in all populations that it's really difficult to kind of say this is the most important population to focus on right now. So we have that awareness, but we also look at kind of just the capital stack. How well along are they in building out that full $24 million budget? Because that's one of the things that the Housing Finance Commission is looking at is, yes, are they meeting the different priorities? But if they meet all the priorities and they're not in a financial state to really go once they get that award, then that can create a bunch of issues from a financial standpoint. So,
Don't they have to be ready to go to apply for this though?
they do.
So it wouldn't be, I don't know, to me, that wouldn't be part of the criteria because they would have to show that they're ready to go in order to apply and have all the financing behind it.
Yeah, and we get their budgets and kind of how they've lined out their capital stack, what they've already leveraged with other funding sources. Some funding sources and leverages are more are stronger than others, I guess. So that's one of the things that we do when we look at the applications is just kind of what they've already identified as leverage for the project. Is it what's better than the others? And I think that's one thing that Catholic Charities just does a really good job on is that leveraging of resources, and that's one of the reasons why they end up being so successful.
Because I've heard the same concerns that Commissioner French has just stated. And I guess one of the concerns that I've heard from several constituents is that once those havens are established, so they can establish them, but then how are we holding them accountable to what that is? Because I'm hearing a lot of, that there's supposed to be all these services that are being provided, and there's not as many services being provided as were said during the process.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult for me to speak to that because these end up being funded by other funding sources than our own. Yeah, so that is, I think they're doing as best job as they can given, I mean, one of the challenges is they're especially in the havens that are most visible downtown. Catholic Charities is serving some of the most difficult to serve populations. So I think that even if it is true that they're providing the greatest services possible, the public, what the public sees may appear like that's not occurring because it is such a visible population. So yeah, I believe that they're doing the best that they can with to meet their commitments on these applications.
Yeah, and there's a haven out in my district, so it's not just downtown that I'm hearing that from. So anyway, I mean, that's one of the questions I guess I would have is just, it's kind of those staffing levels that they talk about of the wraparound services within them. those kinds of things that I don't know if that's part of your, as you're looking at these projects, what all is encompassed. So I don't know. That's why I'm asking you, I guess.
Yeah, and absolutely, we do look at the different partnerships. So like Snap in their application, they were looking to partner with other communities, service providers to be able to offer some of those services. Catholic Charities in their application, they're looking at partnerships with some other folks as well as what they offer on site. So yeah, they're all aware of the populations and the difficulties. And certainly something that we're looking at when we evaluate.
So what were some of the factors that resulted in a nearly 10-point spread in the average? Was it that there were actually large gaps in different criteria, or was there somebody that scored the SNAP one really, really low to drag down their average?
Yeah,
I ask that because we missed out on some broadband funding because somebody across the board ranked Spokane or Broadlink really low, and that threw off the average. So I know averages aren't always the best to determine scoring, because one person can tank a project if for some reason they like another one.
Yeah, and I would say that the scoring was very consistent across the board.
Okay.
All four of the scores, we had one score that just scored both applications very high, and then all the other scores were really close. But all four of us identified Catholic Housing Ventures as the better, I guess, points receiver in the application process.
Okay.
And I would just add, there are no guarantees that this gets funded. I think it's a really competitive project that I would anticipate gets funded, but that decision is really ultimately with the Housing Finance Commission. Commissioner Jordan.
What is what goes into, how many projects typically get kind of moved to the next level at the commission point? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it kind of varies.
Yeah.
Really kind of on the number of requests, because they have a pot of funding. They try and allocate or at least reserve X amount of dollars per county, but that doesn't mean that all the counties will be funded, or even necessarily that all the counties will bring a project forward. So it's variable enough that I can't say one way or the other, I guess.
We were funded last year.
Yeah, and we've done really well in the past. We've got really good developers in Spokane that remain competitive throughout the state.
I'll just say that I was able to kind of go around and tour some of the Catholic Charities facilities, and was really impressed with the work that they're doing. They described some statistics. I think it was something like in their housing units, over 90% of the folks are still stably housed within 2 years or something similar. And they explain that that's significantly higher than the national average for these kind of housing developments. And they describe that as related to the wraparound support that they provide, which is at a higher level than many other nationwide. I think they said the nationwide average was like 50 or 60%, and they're significantly higher. So that was encouraging to me. Just thought I'd share that. I could certainly figure out what the specific numbers were and pass those around. But we did get to go down and kind of just briefly take a look at that area where this development would be, and was just impressed with what I saw. It seems like this, both seem like really good proposals, but seems like there's more units in this project for a little bit better bang for the buck. Both populations, obviously very important, but I think I appreciate the families and children focus being really important for kind of reducing ACEs, right, and traumatic experiences for kids. So those are just my
So looking at the committee composition, you got Pam Park from the Housing Authority, Ben Stuckert from Low Income, City of Spokane, Spokane County. Good looking guy from Spokane County. Is there a relationship between the Low Income Housing Consortium and this effort with regard to providing the tax credit program and the construction that's going to go on here?
I think you'd say yes. I'll say yes. And the reason I say yes is Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium is effectively an advocacy group for, so it's a number of low income housing developers within our area that advocate for affordable housing development projects. So the purpose of the Low Income Housing Consortium is really to advocate for additional development of affordable housing units.
And did you state that he provided a letter asking for both? I don't have my computer in front of me, so.
Yeah.
I had another meeting that went long this morning, so it's like I was racing to get in here. So his letter was in support of setting both forward.
Yeah, it was suggesting that we send both forward.
Just so you know, he wasn't.
I didn't see that letter.
Yes.
Thank you.
So he wasn't proposing.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
It's 93% still housed after 2 years, just FYI.
I think that, yeah, no, I mean, I don't have a problem supporting the top scoring, moving that forward to the state. Hopefully we can just, the SNAP will, maybe next year would be, they'll still be eligible to be forwarded for their project. One thing that I think we need to keep working on in terms of like federal legislation around this is just that, best practice really is integrating, affordable housing in different neighborhoods with different income levels. I think what I keep reading and hearing about is when you create a very concentrated area of folks who are trying to escape, homelessness and poverty and substance use, you can kind of create challenging circumstances. So I know, but the problem is these tax credits you have to build every unit to be for very low income individuals. So just something to keep thinking about is, it'd be great if we also had tax credits to do, different types of incomes in different apartment buildings. So you have a mixture of folks and, all the studies show when you had people with housing vouchers going to different neighborhoods that were mixed income, you had better results, for those kids later in life. So it's no fault of, SNAP or Catholic Charities. They're just trying to find a funding source. But it's frustrating to me that the funding sources are very limited for affordable housing, and they really create kind of warehousing of everybody who are struggling to be stable. So it's not a great model over time, and I think that's probably where there are challenges in some of these different havens. So that's just my statement.
Is it possible to provide for us or for me a map of the urban growth boundary or urban area and identify where these projects have been located at? And to get to Commissioner Amber's suggestion, it'd be nice to be able to find out what neighborhoods don't have them. And how would you incorporate this into, I don't know, Upper South Hill, Lower South Hill, Gonzaga? How would you incorporate that concept into neighborhoods that don't currently have it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. One of the things that we're really looking at doing as we're building out the new housing and community development team is providing that type of data analysis to you all, so that you have some of that information. So yeah, I don't know when or what it'll look like, but I'm on it.
No, this morning is fine.
Well, it's something that when I was on the Housing Authority Board for 5 years, it was a constant struggle, because the goal is really to provide affordable housing in every neighborhood. But it's very challenging with not just zoning, but also the way tax credits and different incentives are set up. So anyway.
And we've got some additional flexibility with some of our local resources to be able to fund some of the more diverse housing, like what we're talking about here today. And that's something that we're really, as I'm looking at future funding allocations and how we're prioritizing, those are some of the things that I really want to make sure that we're data informed in how we're doing things. And so yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see what that looks like. I can see it in the crystal ball, how great it's going to be, but I don't know how I'm going to get there yet. And then I'll follow up if we find out that this project was funded.
Thank you. It's gonna take us to Kyle and then Brad.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ben Bradabo here today to talk through the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone budget for 2024. Talking about some of the changes and setting the hearing for this, so we can have a
Not in my district.
lovely public comment period at one of our briefings.
Sorry, we're just having a little.
Yeah, we're just,
When
They're
you're
being
Grinning
rude.
that
That's
you're
what
not.
they're
It's
doing.
not
we're just being grateful that that's not in our district is all. I mean, just being quite frank.
You guys didn't trade for
No.
West Terrace yet? Okay, just check.
Yeah, thank you very much. So
Wonderful
have a few slides today, and this is ahead of setting the date for the public hearing for October 10th. So there'll be a resolution next week setting that date, and this is an overview of our budget. Generally, it's similar. We're planning the same assessments as last year, the same total amount that gets distributed amongst the properties within the flood control zone district. The big one, the top one here, is this work with Jacobs Engineering under the ARP funded project. So we're working on that. Today we're having a field trip to go look at some of the stuff in the lake, having a public meeting tomorrow to talk about that project. And as we go down the list, there's things of maintaining the flood control district equipment that we're planning to repair, but we're still using it. We're planning to replace, but still using it. We still have funding from the capital grant, which is from the state legislature that was reappropriated. So we're planning to work on spending that next year. And then operations of the equipment as it's being slated for replacement, aquatic weed treatment, just the major activities that we do in the district every year. So next slide. As I mentioned, there's no increase in the total assessment. So we've maintain that the same. We've seen some cost savings from our staffing. We've taken some of the water quality sampling in-house. We're also receiving reimbursement from ARP for the labor costs associated with the lake activities. And the unknowns at the bottom, this is general bidding climate. What do we decide to do with the ARP funding? And then how does that project get bid into next year? So we'll see how that goes. We made assumptions in this budget, and we'll see how those bids come back. Next slide is quite an eye chart, and the top line is the total assessments remaining the same from last year. ARP funding is broken out towards the bottom. Happy to take questions on this, but we can go to the final slide. And this just talks about, we presented this to the advisory board with the district. We presented it to them a month ago, and then we've just been discussing it with them through August. We're presenting that tonight. It's part of the presentation. We're gonna present that tonight at the public, or I'm sorry, tomorrow night at the public meeting. And then this, for the board's actions on this is to set the public hearing next week and then have the public hearing on the 10th of October. So generally it's continue on. The uncertainty is how does the ARP funding shake out? What do we end up doing at Newman Lake with about $2 million from ARP funding? Any questions?
So I'm looking for just refreshing my memory, because I thought that when we started down this roll about changing legislation and stuff, the flood control district and the board would become independent from the Board of County Commissioners. So is that in fact what is happening, or did that get side railed? Is there a day in my future where we don't have to review the budget for the health, the district, is that they'll be a totally standalone entity?
That is possible under, I believe under statute, that is allowable. We are not taking action directly towards that. We've discussed that and how does that work. We've talked with the advisory board on how they might take a more formal role in that. But at this point, we don't have activities going kind of building that up, the transition.
Thank you.
And I think we would comment that this ARP project is kind of a key milestone to even really pushing that discussion forward, because that would also require a transfer of assets and some other more, kind of technical components, but hopefully we can get the lake in a more sustainable setup after this project.
Well, I know a lot of the discussion was around redoing the methodology for the assessments, and so we couldn't actually sort of let them kind of go off, independent until we finish that obligation, and I don't think that sort of went, what was that, December? That actually went, we actually completed our obligation to that. The legislation that was passed, but now that is implemented, so I mean, and then as to like Kyle said, I mean, this I think sets the entity up, gives them sort of the assets and resources they need to, if we would like to look at that possibility, I think now is an opportunity where we can legitimately be successful kind of moving on if we were to go down that road.
Would that be something you're going to do?
I'm hearing from a lot of the people that live out there that they would like to do that, so
Yeah.
I'd be willing to do it. I mean, I've there's a lot of folks who have approached me and said, like, yeah, we'd like to do this ourselves. We don't want the county. I mean, there's some people that are upset with the way the county's doing it. There's some people that like the way the county does things. So I don't know. We will see if that's what they want. I'm sure our staff would love the time back, by not having to do this. But
Is that something that takes a vote then? Of all of the
I think there's
stakeholders then?
multiple ways to do it.
Okay, all right.
But they have to initiate it.
No, I think there's actually a way we could do it legislative, just us. We could take a vote that does it, but there has to be an entity in place to receive those responsibilities that are required to run. So there's some work, but I believe the final decision would be just a vote of the five of us.
One option.
Sorry. Yeah, one of the options, so.
But it's in your district, I'd certainly follow your lead, but I mean, if that's the direction you want to go in, I mean,
We'll get the ARP stuff taken care of and then see where we are at that point.
Would they have to set up like their own, district to
I
then
think
handle?
essentially having an entity like a water district, kind of similar to like a sewer
Liberty
district.
Water
that
Sewer
Liberty
District.
Lake has, correct.
Any other questions on this?
No, I'll be curious if you can send us an email getting, the feedback you get tomorrow night.
Sure.
Just so we're aware before we have the public hearing, what people are saying, that would be great. Just a quick summary.
Yeah, very good.
Okay,
Thank you.
and thank you. Okay, next, that's gonna take us to Jeff McMorris.
And Justin.
And Justin, you want Justin coming up too? Very good.
Where's Jess?
So this is a follow-up on last week when you heard from Marsha Malson, Race Redeem Foundation, and at the end of our ARP ideas that came forward through ARP. But we have the list of those that were being looked at funding outbound through alternative sources. We had some questions after last week around mental health uses, what's allowed of them, particularly around education outreach versus on-the-ground training. Chris Anderson, Justin, and I have spent a fair amount of time together the last few days. And the second one I just passed out, you'll see the original request that matches up with the budget they had last week. We've talked with Marsha, got some follow-up from her to help answer some of these questions. So the original ask had the 195 for salaries, benefits. Those salaries and benefits do need to be directly related to direct service on the ground versus administrative sitting behind the desk. And we're comfortable that roughly a third of the time will be devoted to direct services. So that's, we rounded numbers, but that's roughly where you are. Justin mentioned it would be good to actually broaden the Narcan training beyond schools and other communities that they're working with into businesses, large organizations, not unlike even the county here for our employees. When we talked with her about that, she liked the idea. It's something that they've been talking about. She's more than happy to take that on, which is why it's one of two reasons why the Narcan and Narcan training line went up. There's also the bottom line SAFE program. There's a roughly 25% of that program is Narcan kit or training related. So we moved, originally we had about 25% there. They decided to make more sense to have them in Narcan training line. The Addiction Help Finder, we've not touched at this point. So our belief for your decision point is you can go up to about this 200,000 annually from mental health and be well within what's allowed through the RCW. You could also fund everything through OAC, the whole ask or any amount thereof. OAC is more flexible, and the part that is not fundable through mental health could be funded through OAC if you wanted to rate funding. So I think your decision points are, are you going to fund at what level, from what pot? And if OAC, do you want to just say we're going to do it separately, or do you want to go through the same process as everything else once that process is a little more firmly established based on yesterday's conversation?
Only that after extensive conversation with Chris and Jeff, we do believe that the measures we put in place, as well as the specific designation of the funding, would fall in line with the funding being reallocated to the specific areas, with what the intent and purpose behind the mental sales tax is, provided that the board supports that decision.
One other thing I'll throw out just before you guys all jump into your discussion. We did have brought up just in talk with commissioners, the idea of having one of the requirements for the year 2 and year 3 distributions, if you were to decide to fund multi-year, that they show that they've matched that dollar amount. So if it was 200,000 a year for 3 years, they would show they'd raised 200,000 in the first 12 months to match what would be a second distribution in year 2, and then again raising that much for the third distribution, which Chris feels legally is certainly allowed, but that would, incentivize some partnerships.
So I'm just trying to get up to speed on the process. So just going back in time, because I'm just trying, I wasn't here when the first application, I think, probably came in for ARPA funds, right? So basically, normally what is the process for like applying for the mental health sales tax dollars? This is kind of out of process, but it's because there was an application for ARPA and the board decided to look at other funding sources. Is that
So
where it came from
since I've
originally?
been here, I can speak to the last 2 years. During the ARPA process, both the community outreach, I would say some of the programs that came in through our online IDEA portal, and the application process. So of those 5, the Hilliard Library Native Project, Adult Teen Challenge, Little Scholars in this one. I believe Adult Teen Challenge did submit an actual application for ARPA funds. The other 4, we were aware that they were going to and interested in submitting an application.
Right.
Then there were other conversations that happened, so they came in through the ARPA process. And we essentially said, you know, there's board interest in funding, fill out the application for mental health instead. We didn't want to waste their time.
Okay.
So they came in through the ARP process, doesn't mean that they all actually submitted the formal application.
And when the community services oversaw the portion of mental health sales tax dollars, a needs assessment was created in the community. When that was identified, a proposal was put forward as to a program that would address that. That was presented to the board would approve that. And then when an RFP would go out, we would do a selection, and then the board would then choose, after a procurement process, one of the providers that was selected by that evaluative team. And the board then would approve that contract, and then the funding was set specific to the needs that are created in that. So that's the other side to when it went through our department, and is currently how we process any of the projects under the community services.
So 2 avenues. So sometimes there were formal RFPs, sometimes they came in more through commissioner community awareness.
All right, so, but moving forward, there will be some sort of RFP process for the
I think-
opioid treatment dollars, I would hope.
Based on your conversation yesterday, I will assume yes, but y'all have not made that final decision yet, so.
And a note on that, again, Chris can speak this as well. It only denotes that a process be in place, not that you have to go through the evaluative procurement process established under the RFP. Only that the board determines how that process and selection would occur.
Well, I'm comfortable with, with the 200,000 proposed, but I think we should not guarantee anything until we've decided what the process will be for the opioid treatment. That's just my first thought for like next steps. And Commissioner French was next, he had already raised his hand.
So to get back to your original question, Commissioner Waldriff, with regard to the ARP and the criteria, I don't know what the other commissioners use. From my standpoint, I tried to focus the ARP funding on one-time expense, one-time experience, as opposed to programs that would be ongoing, knowing that the ARP funds were going to be at one time, what's going to be sustaining it. And so from my standpoint, putting this in the mental health or some other recurring stream of revenue made more sense for that funding consideration as opposed to a one-time event. So that's how I looked at it anyway.
And we did make it very clear to all 5 that came in through ARP, 3 were capital, Hilliard Native Project, and the one out Adult Family. So obviously one time, Little Scholars, even though it is a reoccurring and they could come back, we made it very clear it's a pilot program and there's no guarantee beyond this first funding. And at the staff level, we've had that conversation with Race Rudine that, you know, this is still America, you can come back and ask whatever you want in the future, but we are, this would be a pilot project. It's deemed as kind of one-time funding, but if you come back and make your case, the commissioners can certainly approve more, because that's your role.
Well, and with regard to Little Scholars, the way that was presented is that was gap financing
To the state,
so the state would come in and continue it.
and
And
the
stuff. So,
25 that
yeah,
goes.
so it was a
Oh,
one-time,
right.
it was a one-time effort to fill the gap until the state changed its structure and stuff, so.
I believe the state's already changed its structure, it's just at a future date it takes
Yeah.
effect.
Right.
Commissioner Jordan.
I chatted with Randy and it sounds like we're planning to have a larger discussion about the mental health sales tax next week. I might ask that we just wait until we have that conversation first so we can kind of see what the fund balance is, what the other priorities are, and where something like this might fit in the larger picture of mental health sales tax. It's just hard to say, seeing the number, but not seeing what else it funds and what other opportunities might be. I understand that we will have hopefully some sort of proposal process for the OAC, but I don't quite understand what the process for decision making is for the mental health sales tax money. So that was one thing. The other thing is I'd like to hear at some point Justin's opinion about the Addiction Help Finder piece. Is that adding something beneficial? Is it duplicative of 211 or other services? I just don't have the expertise to know that. So I don't know if today is the right time for that, but that was another question I had about that.
To your question, because last week we stated we were gonna bring this back this week, so. I don't know, Randy, I see you're on, because I think we're gonna get a deeper dive into the mental health sales tax, but we do know there's plenty of fund balance at this point in time to handle this. So I don't know if Randy wants to speak to that, just to put your mind at ease, because this is finishing what I did through ARP in my mind, and that we will be looking at ensuring what the procedures are as we move forward with mental health sales tax dollars, because I've been pretty adamant, knowing some of those dollars are for liabilities that we have, so we have to keep some of those. But sales tax has been better in the last couple of years than we anticipated and mentioned, so I know there's balance there. But I still see Justin in the future, his team, as the team that determines that, which will be the longer conversation when we have that fund balance discussion. So I think we just need to assure you that there's funding today, because I don't want to, last week we stated we'd come back this week and have this discussion, and I don't want to continue, because I think we can answer that question for you. Randy?
Yeah, Mary, sorry about that. Yes, you have plenty of fund balance both in 148 and Fund 159. If you were to do this, you have millions of dollars of fund balance right now.
So I don't know if that answers your question fully, but I think for the decision on this today, but we definitely want to do a deeper dive into what it looks like and what the procedures will be for the future. Because, I've been pretty clear, we definitely, as we went through the ARP process, knew we had availability in the mental health, and so there were some of those things that we pushed. And this is, in my mind, kind of the last one of those. Otherwise, we really have to have a process, so everyone's going through that process. I know for me, I had discussions with Justin and Jeff yesterday to make sure that, I think that was my question at the end of last week, was to say I wanted to talk to Justin to make sure that it would meet the criteria for the mental health. So knowing that this portion meets the mental health purpose, and we have the fund balance available to do this. I'm okay doing this, but on the OAC side, she's gonna have to go through the process that we're gonna have, but I'm not comfortable guaranteeing that to her. you know, and as I talked to both Justin and Jeff, you know, fentanyl is a huge issue in our community right now. And she's one of the groups that is out there educating and getting the information out there. You know, looking if we can partner with them in the schools to get the education, because it's really getting kids not to take anything. You know, I have a niece who's a corrections officer with the Department of Corrections, and like she says to the people she's, you know, watching over, you know, anything you take on the streets today, you're playing Russian roulette with, you know, potentially dying. And I just, you know, I know sometimes when I hear kids in high schools that, you know, accidentally die, I know that's the term of they took something laced with fentanyl. So if this meets the criteria, which was the question I asked last week, then I would be okay moving forward on just the mental health side, similar to what Commissioner Waldron was saying. And I think, you know, knowing this would be just for the 3-year period, because initially she came in and asked for over $500,000.
It was a one-time $500,000 request last year.
Yeah.
That changed to this 3-year.
So I'd be okay from that perspective, but putting in where she has to match in order to get the additional funding. That based on the discussions that I've had this week, that's where I would be.
So you're saying the 200 from the mental health sales tax, and then
2 more years if she can meet.
if she can raise 200. Right. And then she can still come back, apply for the 155 from OAC, but you just, today, I mean, we can't make the promise.
That commitment.
We're not at that point yet. Okay. Yeah, no, I'd be comfortable with that. But I'm going to encourage her, I mean, certainly to seek the opioid abatement council funding. But yeah, you're right, since it's not stood up, they haven't met yet, so I mean, it's impossible for us to guarantee that funding now. But I'd agree with you.
Yeah, and I'm on board with that as well.
Scott?
Related to this, Commissioner Woldruff had posed the question of how will the OAC funds be managed and the procedural stuff. We do intend to, everything we presented to date shows that we will be doing RFPs for it. We'll have that contract administration side, and it's actually required in the One Washington MOU. So Justin's, all the documentation that he's developed to date shows the intention is once the commissioners set the priority based on community feedback, however that's going to happen, there will be a typical RFP process for receiving those in based on the prioritized use of those funds by the commissioners.
And the other thing I would say is I think in the contract, we do have to come up with what those measurable items are there as well. Because Commissioner Walter brought that up last week.
So I did text her sitting over there because we saw percentages. I'm like, percentage of what makes a difference? So she did reply. I think I have it right. I think it was a voice text. She said she was driving. But she said they did Narcan training for 300 people last year. So it'd be 25% increases off of a 300. And she said they were in 25 different schools, touching 175 students in the SAFE program. So that's more of an OAC versus a mental health, but that's a little more information around the goals. But if you guys want to see the contract before it goes out, we can certainly, one of you certainly will see if you have to sign it. But
and I think like we talked as they move into business and organizations, I mean, I think that's really important. I was talking about that with Jeff and Justin yesterday, that, you know, with my husband being in construction, that it's, you know, he's just starting to go, I should have Narcan, you know, on each job site and job trailer, because they're seeing more people use their porta potties that they can't lock up, and just, you know, things are happening on their job sites that I won't go into all the details that I think it's something that when you have outdoor job sites, that having those people be aware and understand the need for that. You know, Chris, I don't know if you want to give Anderson your what you did, you know, across the street as you were just walking, you know, out. I think why, you know, it'd be good to, you know, just hear your story, why people need to at least be aware and know and be trained. I don't think it's that hard, but it's like, it's just, I think people then, once they know they can do it, it gives them that confidence. So would you be willing to share?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just read about, you know, prior to that incident occurring, I had read an article, I forget where, but it referenced the state program on the distributed Narcan, and they had indicated that people were being exposed to it, you know, just everyday life by, you know, just picking things up on the street. And so it was free, and I signed up for it, and they mailed it to me, and so I put it in my truck with the rest of, you know, some various first aid and emergency things that I keep in there. And then walking back to the office one day from a meeting, a woman in that bus shelter came out yelling for somebody to call 911. And so I pulled my phone out, and then she said that her friend or boyfriend was overdosing. And so my truck was parked 30 feet away, and I went out and grabbed the Narcan out of the truck and brought it over while talking to 911, and gave him the doses of Narcan. And as the 911 operator was trying to talk me through giving him CPR, he kind of woke up. So, and then, you know, the sheriff's deputies from the courthouse came over, and fire showed up, and he more or less seemed fine. So it was, yeah, fortuitous timing, but yeah, certainly having it available seems like something that would be useful, and it seems like you never really know when it's gonna come up. So, yeah.
I know, I think that's why part of the more we can invest in that education and getting it out there, it's saving a life. So thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. You know, certainly if you have the resources, you use them when the need comes up.
But it was his story that I talked to Max and said, I think this just shows how in, you know, different industries, we've got to be, you know, ready and prepared to help, so.
So I believe I've heard a majority say yes to the mental health 200 for 3 years. I've heard one definite yes to the match. Do we have a head nod?
I don't know if I committed to 3 years, but I'm open for her
Well,
to
it
come
would
back.
be, they have to come back
Yeah.
to, yes, show they've
I'm just
matched
committing to
their
1 year.
goals. We do have to write the contract accordingly. So I guess maybe more discussion there. Is it 3 year with annual renewals meeting base goals?
That's what I stated,
Oh, okay.
but
I didn't see the 3 year on any of
I'm
this.
sorry, it
Sorry.
didn't.
it
was just
wasn't,
be
yes.
released. She would come back, give a presentation here, and you guys would have to, you know, affirm that everything is where it should be.
I'm good with that.
I think it would be renewable based on, you know, she's meeting
The goals.
the goals
The goal.
and that she's matched it.
And then we would write it as a pilot program if you're all,
Yes, and then that kind of finishes our ARP pilot program.
this is the final outlier at this point unless money comes back. So I think, did you want to speak to the addiction help finder? Is that an offline question, Commissioner?
I'll just work with Jess to get my questions answered. So I think it's very clearly do amazing work, so.
So you'll get those baseline numbers from her to put into the
We'll firm up
contract.
the baseline, we'll have a contract. So this would come, there'd be a resolution on consent. If it gets turned by noon tomorrow, who knows? Either next Wednesday or the following, and then generally the way the resolutions are written is the chair of the board can sign the contract when it comes forward. That would be our standard operating procedure. No comments, that's okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, Scott just left. So miscellaneous, you had the miscellaneous on the,
Yeah, so when I talked with Kyle last week, we were talking about maybe be a good idea for us to get the winter ops press conference scheduled sooner rather than later, so we're not rushing as the forecast says snow in a day, or a day or two. So Kyle, were you thinking mid to late October?
Yeah,
So that's most likely we beat the snow, but
exactly.
wait any later, we might not.
Last year, I think it was November 4th, we got a nice snowfall, so be good to hit maybe that last week of October or somewhere in there. On the call right now, I don't think so. I was gonna get some feedback from him. We've done it.
He's up there.
Oh, Pat, you are up there, great. So we've done it at different districts throughout the years. One of the thoughts we had also considered was potentially hosting this year's press briefing at the Wilbert Vault property, since that's also an opportunity to talk about our upcoming project here. Might be a little easier for the press and others to get there, since it would be closer to the downtown core campus. So that was just an idea we were tossing around out there, but certainly up for the board to decide where and when they would like to do so. I think there's a typical time frame we've done it in, like around 11 a.m. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, it seems to me last year we did it about 11. It was before lunch and stuff, and the only thing in terms of improvements over what we did last year is allowing the commissioners to actually drive the graders to get a sense about what that's all about. Stuff would be just a suggestion.
Sounds good.
Not sure if we have a secure enough test course for that.
I've heard
If
about when Al drove an STA bus, and
Yeah,
there's a
well,
reason.
we're not going to go there. So,
There's a reason we don't get to drive STA buses.
But if you don't have a course, we could grade one.
I was thinking more of safe things on the side, enough crash vehicles to be able to destroy if you needed to.
I know that when my wife and I went out to Fairchild and looked at their snow plowing equipment for the runway and stuff, and my wife got a free ride on a snow plow and throw snow for 100 feet. It was great. She still reminds me of that.
so I did not attend last year, so I don't know what improvements could be made.
Oh, it was a great time.
Al, I think, flew solo last year, 'cause 2 years ago,
Yeah,
I was
you're
there.
right,
We were at
there
North
was.
Corral. We were at the old
North Corral,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we're on the bus.
Yeah, the first time we did it, we were all up there.
up north,
We did it a few times up north, because that was the newest building.
right.
But,
Yeah, you're right.
So, is there a date you have in mind?
I mean, whatever works for the most amount of commissioners.
Yeah, doodle it.
That's what I'm thinking.
So you want to schedule it now?
I was thinking just try to schedule it now.
So
What we could do is just do it on a Monday or Tuesday, like at 11, just at our briefing. If it's gonna be right here,
Oh, that's
that
right.
would just
Yeah,
make it
there's a lot
easier.
easier.
if it's where?
which is
Right
never
here
the
at this facility, Wilbert Vault.
Yeah. So we'll do Tuesday, the 24th then, in the morning? We can all walk over there. It's not too cold.
So we would just need to end it
September, October.
September, or October.
October.
Okay.
24th. Chris and Amber, does that work for you guys?
That works.
I just feel like it's like to get 5 schedules, it's probably easier if we just kind of figure out, or
So then-
Monday, because I don't
So
know.
last year it was on December 7th.
Yeah, and there was snow.
So that night
Yeah.
we have a round two.
Yep,
of
it's our round table.
round table, so you're okay with that?
Yeah, fine, okay. Be here all day, so.
Yeah, unless we want to do it Monday, the 23rd, because I think at this point we don't have it scheduled.
We do not.
So we're calling it Snowmageddon?
So do you want to do the Monday and not have it?
I think Tuesday, I'm fine with Tuesday.
I'm just worried if, since we don't have a money meeting, if we have more briefing items.
But we have a budget roundtable in the evening that day, right?
That night, yeah. Okay, let's do it Tuesday the 24th. Gina, will you be able to send out a calendar invite for everybody? I would put, we need to be done at probably 10:30.
And I'll confirm with Pat, roundtable on this. I think it was actually at 11:30 last year, so usually he gets some feedback from the media on timing. But if that works for everybody, 11:30, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, on the 24th.
Well, and if it goes into the noon hour, you're providing lunch, right?
We'll figure something out.
Just saying.
Snow cones.
Yeah. Snow cones, very good, very good. Flavored snow cones.
Let's get that snow cone truck out there.
Okay. There, we're scheduled. Done. Okay, any other miscellaneous items? Oh, okay, Commissioner Friend?
I've got 4 miscellaneous, and then I've got 1 executive session that we were gonna do yesterday, but ran out of time.
4 miscellaneous, okay.
Well, these are really quick.
Right, just have lots of information for us.
Yeah, you know, we hope. So, we started to have the conversation yesterday with regard to housing and some comp plan changes, stuff like that. And I thought I'd share with our new commissioners that in 2014, Smart Growth America published a national survey on identifying counties in the United States that engaged in smart growth strategies. And Spokane County ranked in the top 10%. So if you would like to be able to see that and compare us to other counties, I would encourage that. It was, it's not weighted toward the State's Growth Management Act. It's actually universally accepted growth strategies and stuff. So wanted to make you aware of that. Then I don't know how many of us had an opportunity to talk to MacArthur representatives. I did. And were you here when we started the process with MacArthur, or did we start that before you got here?
It started it, I think, the year before I got here.
Okay, so I'm the only one that's actually been here from day one. We had a really good conversation about all of the things that we've done to improve the criminal justice system. And I thought it was a very good conversation. We did talk about projections with regard to jail capacity, and I reminded them that, you know, in the numbers that Mr. Sparber put together, he did use the JFA and David Bennett models with regard to generating those. And so they were pleased to hear that. And then she asked the question, what could you do to make for continued improvements? And I said, well, it would be great if we had Superior Court actually man the intake and release facility that we spent several $100,000 to construct. And so she was surprised to find that that had not been embraced, even though it's a proven model throughout the country. And Commissioner Commissioner Cooney and I, actually saw that model and working in process and stuff. So, but other than that, it was, and then we also talked about Measure 1. And I said, Measure 1 provides funding for programs. 30% goes to programs, 30% goes to facilities, and 60% goes to communities and stuff. So it was, overall, I thought it was a good conversation, a good way to benchmark, if you will, to bracket all the work that we've done as a county for the last several years. So then third, just want to kind of give a shout out to Mr. Larry Crowder, who on Saturday officially received his National Distinguished Service Award. I know that Commissioner Cooney was there, I was there, and I think Commissioner Waldrop was there. And so there's 450 airport executives that are here in Spokane for the AAAE conference. And it will go through today, and then they'll do site visits tomorrow. And then the conference is over. Did have the opportunity to have dinner Monday night with Sunday night with the deputy director for FAA, and she was very complimentary of the support and the work that's gone on at SIA, and complimentary of our board and the city for supporting the airport, and characterized us as being ahead of the game with regard to not only growth in employments, but also investments into the airport. And she said the facility is really a nice facility, and it would be nice if others throughout the country would achieve the same kind of investments and stuff. So I just wanted to do a shout out to my fellow commissioners with regard to their work as being recognized. And then permitting for the fire. So I know that I spent an incredible amount of time this weekend talking to everybody and his brother about how do we move forward and help those that are victimized by the fire. As it's been conveyed to me that the governor is not excited about supporting our vesting program, which is disappointing. So I did have a conversation with Scott Simmons about, as well as home builders and some of the other folks, about how can we get folks in for permitting and vested into the new code before it goes into place. I did have the opportunity to talk yesterday with one of the plaintiffs in the federal litigation, and they are getting geared up to refile their lawsuit because the building code council did not do what they said they were going to do. And so that will probably create more confusion around permitting, but just wanted to share with you that we're continuing to push that agenda, and Scott has some very good ideas, and I don't know when we want to bring that forward and have a conversation as a board with regard to how can we help these folks. I mean, there's, and I did find out, I think I shared yesterday that the Clean Air Agency had a conversation last Thursday with regard to trying to get access to EPA money, and the information I was given was inaccurate. That is only possible after the federal, or after the president's affirmation, and that's not going to happen. And so here we are. I think we all received a letter from FEMA saying we're out of money, and that came in last week. And did talk to Senator Murray's office, and they've indicated that they are pushing for additional funding for FEMA, but it's probably going to get tied up in this budget reauthorization effort. But in following the press, that is now on the table and stuff. So we'll see how successful they are at getting more money into FEMA to address all of the disasters that have happened, not just Washington. But in her statements, she specifically mentioned the Bray and Oregon fire as a reason for seeking that funding from FEMA. And then the other item I have is for executive session when we get to that point.
And I would just follow up on that I think we know that this funding cycle with the feds is going to be interesting. I've got a civic leadership the first week of October, and we've all been told to make sure we have insurance on our flights and our hotel rooms, because if the government doesn't fund by the end of September, then everything's canceled going forward. So with the feds, so it's
$12 go down.
yes. So it's a real issue if the budget doesn't happen by the end of September. So for lots of purposes, but
Lots of reasons.
but just letting you know that, yeah, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it will affect a lot of things, and then that affects our government grants. Here, the health district, just all those contingencies have to go into place.
Well, that's what the deputy director for FAA was saying, is that, if they don't get the reauthorization, all of federally funded control towers go dark.
shut down. Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting what can actually happen. I think it's only been like several years ago that we had the shutdown, but it dramatically affects a lot of things, so.
Just,
Oh, I have one miscellaneous one. Go ahead.
just a variety of things, since we're talking about the fires that occurred, the impacts on folks. Been chatting with Chandra over at DEM. So as you all know, the governor had provided 1.25 million to the fires here. 4 buckets that I understand its intended use is. One is for disaster case management, temporary housing, unmet needs, and then it looks like there was a expanded use of it for demo and debris removal. So there's been, Commissioner Kearns and I were at a long-term recovery group last Thursday, and while it was intended to focus on long-term, there was a lot of questions around cleanup and asbestos testing and permits and, sequencing and all that stuff. And it's really clear that I think some are that are maybe more rural are moving forward with things, and then you've got a number of folks that have insurance who've already hired a mitigation company to come in, and then they're doing the sample testing and then sending it off to the lab. So you may have 25 mitigation companies. There's 2 labs in Spokane, in the Spokane region, and they're now all saying 4 to 5 weeks backup on being able to turn around the test. So can't do demo and debris removal, can't issue a permit until the asbestos test is done. So you have this backlog that's being created. I think some encouraging news was based on the disaster case assessments that were being done. We learned from the state DEM that nearly 80% of the homeowners who lost their home had homeowners insurance of some shape. So it was a lot higher number than I had anticipated.
Everybody seemed really surprised at that number.
Yeah. So, but there is still that 20% group, and you've seen the emails from Mayor Cooper highlighting some of the concerns about, with precipitation coming, if the debris has not been cleaned up, what's the impacts on leaching into the groundwater, into the lake and whatnot. So anyhow, there's this 1.25 million out there, and from what I'm gathering, it looks like while those are the 4 buckets, the commissioners have the ability to inform on how some of those dollars should be prioritized in there. Chandra originally said, maybe 350 for demo and debris cleanup, but I'm seeing some things that that Commissioner Jordan had forwarded over, and it looks to me, if I'm reading correctly, that the commissioners can say, no, we want a lot more monies to go to the demo and debris. So I think it's probably good to have Chandra come back in and have a conversation around kind of next steps on that, and how do we start advancing some of those efforts around the demo and debris removal while we have time right now. There's and we might need to think about how do we use some state resources as well to do some contracting with mitigation companies for the uninsured, and then how do we get these asbestos tests backlogged? How do we look for some other avenues to get those things advanced as well? So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of moving around here, but that's what I'm hearing. I think that's what most of you are hearing in terms of the biggest concern right now is the demo and debris removal to be able to address for these homeowners.
So can I follow up on that? So for the process that we're using with regard to permits, we can't issue a permit until the demolition has been completed. But can we accept an application for a permit. And I think the application for a building permit today will vest you in the code today. And then at least they will be in the queue for this building code cycle and stuff. So I had heard that we were not even receiving the applications until the demo permits had been issued and stuff. And is that accurate? And if it's not accurate, what is the metric that we're using to be able to accept a building application? And then the second question is, if I submit a building application for a building permit today to be vested into today's code, and then I decide after designing and meeting with my architect and contractor, I want to make adjustments to that, I can make those adjustments on that original application without constituting a new application. So that clarity is what I think some folks are looking for in their ability to move forward investing this code cycle. So can we clarify that so that we can give accurate information to people as they move forward?
Yeah, there's a couple parts to that. What I had chatted with Monty about is, what I had been hearing is, hey, we can't even get a demo and debris permit until we have an asbestos test completed. So I asked Monty, how are we giving confidence to individuals that while they are working on getting their asbestos test results, we have a list of people who have come in who have indicated their need for a demo and debris permit, and we can quickly turn that as soon as their asbestos test is done. He did indicate that the demo and debris permit is all online, so people don't even have to come down here. Then the kind of second part of that is I'm asking Monty to give kind of a list of what is the documentation that needs to be provided, minimum documentation needs to be provided to the county for us to be able to issue a building permit, so that we know kind of, is it site plan, is it drawings? You know, there's some that have come in before that were just simply a sketch on a piece of paper, but what is the minimum that we need to have so that we can help the community know, those that want to rebuild, and try to get that, encourage them to come in more quickly on stuff.
Well, and so along that line, if they can make an application for a building permit separate from the demo permit, and we condition the issuance of the building permit upon the successful mitigation of the demo, just like we would in terms of, you know, a certificate of occupancy or anything like that, you gotta meet these thresholds before we can give you a C of O. If there are conditions that have to be met before we can give you a building permit, but you're still in the cycle, I mean, even that provides a window of opportunity for people to be able to come in. Because I talked to one homeowner over the weekend that said, well, you know, I'm trying to work with a contractor and stuff, but we're trying to figure out how we're gonna make these improvements. But he says, I got all kinds of plans that are on the shelf. If I just took one of his plans on the shelf that are completed, approved, and everything he's built it before, can I just submit that and get vested? And then I'll make modifications to it during the design process. And I'm going, shoot, from my standpoint, you bet, because you know, even as an architect working with the club bill, just thinking, I even know somebody's house that got burnt down to the foundation, and we started all over from scratch, but it was based upon, you know, the original permit. We didn't have to file for a new permit and stuff. So we do have a track record of being able to do that. So can we do that moving forward?
So I think
Definitely, I mean, to Al's comment is that, you know, one of my neighbors, I mean, they built the exact same house, we built the exact same house, they didn't change a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and there's people that will do that.
Sure. And so as far as building permits, there are minimum requirements both
Right.
statutorily and within the code.
Right.
And you have to meet those. I guess the issue in your question that I don't know off the top of my head is basically how, certainly modifications can be made and are made, and that's a
They're
normal
done
course.
all the time.
What I don't know is how far you can take that and at what point those modifications become basically a new plan that would require a new application for a new permit, right? So if, I mean, to your example, if you start with pre-existing plans as the base, and if you're just changing a little bit here and there, I think no problem. If you are then submitting a brand new set of plans, that is likely going to create an issue.
When we issue a permit, we don't base it upon the plan that's submitted, we base it upon the dollar estimate. And that's how we charge our fee. And
Right.
so that dollar estimate can be the same, but the plan could change and stuff. So the plan submitted doesn't affect the permit. It affects construction
Right, but
and stuff.
that's
So
not, that
there's
doesn't
nothing in
change.
the code, there's nothing in the code that defines how much you can change a plan from time submittal until approval. There's nothing in the code.
Building
I
code.
know
or
that,
code.
building code.
I
Nothing
think
in
that's
the building
correct.
code that defines that.
I think,
There is in the building code a definition for a remodel. But to have a remodel, you've got to have a structure. We don't have a structure. We're building new. The threshold for the building code, 60%.
I think your first question, Commissioner, it seems like a reasonable accommodation to be able to issue a building permit conditioned on successful demo and debris being done. And I'll verify that with the team. And then the second one is, I've asked the same question to our teams, like, to what extent can changes be made to plans after you submit them and you get an initial building permit that would not trigger something new to occur?
So let me give you a specific example. I appreciate your patience with this, but if I built my home 20 years ago and I ended up with 3 kids and I had 4 bedrooms, and now all those kids are out of the house and I'm going to remodel my house now, and in a couple of those bedrooms I'm going to turn into a family room. You know, the outside of that house hasn't changed any, the inside of the house has changed, but does it affect us? Does it affect the building? Does it affect anything that's critical to the life safety of that occupant? Not a darn thing. So why would we use that as a metric to impose upon somebody and their ability to remodel their home or to rebuild their home?
I agree with you.
I'm just trying to find a path forward that will save these people money, because of the 20% that didn't have insurance, we don't find a path forward, then they'll be in the track and homeless shelter. I mean, that's just, government should not be the obstacle. Government should be your one working for you, not against you.
Yeah, that's clearly what
Anyway.
we're hearing too. People
Well, if we could
looking
get some
for
clarity
solutions.
around that so we can give some direction to people in the community, that would be greatly appreciated. Because right now, I'm hearing a variety of different stories, and even if we could take that clarity and reduce it to writing so that somebody could go to and say, there it is. You know, I know we tried through the other permit, and we were almost there except for lack of compassion in Olympia, so.
And we would have a list of, to know who's been affected, so it would only be
Yeah.
for those affected.
Yep.
I mean, because we have all the parcel numbers and the names attached to those parcel numbers at this point in time, so if that person sold their property, it would not be for that purpose. You know, it's just for the people that are currently staying on their property.
I understand back in the firestorm in the early 90s, the county got creative in terms of how they could get people up and running, building permits issued quickly as well. So Monty's trying to reach out to some employees back at that time, some past inspectors, to see if he can draw any information of how was the county able to do things expeditiously for the citizens.
Okay. Thank
Long
you.
time ago. One more.
Okay.
What
Amber, did we
Amber?
finish yours?
So, I had been reached out to by several of the immigrant refugee serving organizations. There's a commerce grant to support refugees from Ukraine and Afghanistan. I think it's probably another grant, that there's probably been several. But the county, it has to be the county that I guess applies. So I guess Thrive and Refugee Connections, and anyway, I said, well, who all is wanting to apply, not to just have one particular group. So I guess there's a group of them that want to apply. So who should I connect them with at the county to be able to support them, to try and get those funds to help folks that they're serving?
We're currently working with Thrive through a commerce grant for Ukrainian refugee relocation assistance. So that's already in place.
That's how they purchased the
Right.
hotel was, that grant also had to be applied for by the county. They couldn't do it, so they came to us and said, we need you to apply for this.
Early summer.
The ones that did that.
Yeah, Heather's been involved with it. I think I wanna say we just re-upped some more dollars with them too. Heather's.
So this particular grant from Commerce, they're hoping to award 4.3 million in the next 2 years to multiple counties in Washington that are serving high numbers of Ukrainian, Afghan, and other refugees. Grants can fund emergency costs like rent and housing, transportation, healthcare, food, employment barrier removal, clothing, and other essential items. So
Sounds really similar to
Sounds
what
like
we
the
already.
previous
should I-
grant we've
like,
already-
should I just
We've
forward-
already received, yeah.
So this one is due later in the fall. They're having like a Q&A posted by October 3rd on the Commerce website.
I would say send it over to Heather Arnold, because she's
And
got
have folks
familiarity
work
with
through
the.
her. Cause I think so in the past, who from the county did the application process?
I think they did the
They
application.
did the
They did it all.
application,
Oh.
they did the
And
And then
application.
the county.
It was a
submitted.
really quick
Okay.
turn. They came to us,
Right,
Borisov came in, asked for some really quick
Yeah.
assistance from the county, and we worked with them. They did the
Turned around in a
application. We just filed it. Once the commissioners approved it, we just filed it. That was something they already had developed.
Okay, so I should refer these folks to Heather.
Yeah, send it over to Heather, and then she can do an assessment of the actual grant and see whether the county's eligible to apply and bring it back to the commission, see if you guys want to do this.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I mean, we did it before, so,
Yeah.
I mean, we're happy to, I think they did all kind of the legwork and then we just, turned it in on their, because the county has to turn it in, so it's through the.
Yeah, they came in with a partnership. Can't remember the organization that Boris is affiliated with. It's the
World Relief was-
Ukrainian,
Well, there's the Ukrainian group, but
it was the local group, and
Yeah,
then they
right.
partnered with, they identified Thrive as the entity who could actually help with the resettlement stuff. So they kind of came in with a package, said, hey, this is out there. County, would you be willing to submit this? And the commissioner said, yep, let's do it.
Okay.
If there's any specifics, Arian was the one who was working for the county at the time that did that, so.
No, I think they're willing to probably write the proposal and say what they're gonna do, and they just need the county to be on board with supporting it.
we have been, we will be.
Okay.
Back to the wildfires. Early on, commissioners had asked about the ability to utilize rental assistance dollars that are remaining, whether it could be used for individuals who have been displaced. And the couple of clarities that we've gotten is, we thought we had about 2.9 million. We had a couple months outstanding from SNAP, the numbers that Heather had confirmed as of end of last week. We've got about 1.3 million remaining in that fund. Looking at the rules, talking with SNAP, conferring internally, what we've discovered is, yes, the funds can be used while it was intended to be for rental assistance. There are some clauses in there that says it can be used for people who have been displaced from their home. It still has the 80% AMI, you have to be 80% or under. Because there's a separate, this is not a providing funds for people who are in arrears on rent. This is more of a look forward. There's two things that the funds can be used for. It can be used for someone who goes and rents at a new location. It can also be used for someone who, a family or whatever, who is going to stay at a hotel for some period of time. The tricky thing on it is it only can be on a reimbursement basis. So we looked at multiple ways. Can we set up a way to advance some people funds who we know needs to have some temporary housing? And every angle we looked at, couldn't do that. We couldn't find a path forward. So there is the ability to provide funds for people who have been impacted by this, have lost their home, who need temporary housing, whether it's in a rental that they're going into or into a hotel. There's logistical challenges just in terms of administering this thing that I just want you all to be aware of. SNAP, because the volume of qualified rental applications that have been coming in, they went from, I think at some point in time, they're up to 18 people who are processing these things. They have 2 people right now. Being able to get a list of qualified individuals, which Chandra or getting a list of people who are impacted, which Chandra is trying to finalize that and do some validation of it. And then being able to accept these things in and process those. There's going to be some administrative challenges of doing that. What we learned from Chandra on Friday is her understanding is that Red Cross is still providing temporary housing for individuals who are in need of that. And what she shared is that that's up to 90 days. So there is some housing assistance that's being provided today. So this could be a program that the commissioners look at for kind of post 90 days that could be eligible. Up north, the feedback that we're getting is, one, there's no rentals, there's no hotels. People are not going to leave their properties. They're not going to come down here to Spokane. So likely not going to be a big use out of it because it's only 20%, which is about 75 homes, 20% uninsured, so about 75 homes. That's probably going to be the group that's qualified under the 80% AMI. So we're talking a pretty small number of individuals here. But I wanted to share that with you. There is a path that we could do it. It's not ideal because people then have to put out money and then come back and get reimbursed for it.
But is that where Innovia, I mean, if they qualify in the 80% AMI, is that where Innovia could come in with their dollars to do the first month to then start the money process for that reimbursement?
Yep, that would be ideal.
Where they're paying, because you just have to have 1 month to really get it started, and then you can just be on that cycle.
Yep.
So as you guys are at the long-term recovery committee, that would be one of the things I would ask.
Oh, so that's also something so one of the other things that when they presented for this long-term recovery meeting, they made it very clear they don't want electeds on the long-term recovery group.
Right.
We are to be on an advisory group to just sort of stay informed on what the recovery group is doing. I was pretty surprised. I mean, honestly, yeah, no, Chandra,
They raised the bar.
yeah, no, they
No longer qualified.
they have a lady that's sort of kind of there to kind of consult on best practices of a long-term recovery. She was on the long-term recovery group in Okanagan when they on both of their fires, the Carlton complex and the Carlton complex, and then the ones they had in 2020. I don't remember what those fires were called, but no, she made it very clear that it is best to not have electeds on that. It is for the people that live in the affected areas of the fire, but even so, I'm stressing like electeds, not on that. You can be on an advisory group to stay informed on what is happening. On sort of what the long-term recovery group is doing. But yeah, and she stressed that at the larger meeting that Scott and I were at last Thursday too, so.
And so one of the things that I did hear back with regard to the last meeting, for the next meeting, if we could actually have somebody from building and planning there at the meeting to be able to answer questions, because there's a lot of questions that are being asked that only the county can respond to, and without somebody there, it's kind of.
Yeah.
So they've scheduled the next meeting.
Yeah.
It's this Thursday.
But they don't want to have conversations around what's happening, like what's the near-term things. They wanna, multiple times, we had citizens who are asking, people in the community who are being impacted, who are asking like, how do I get a permit? What do I do for demo and debris? And they kept kind of redirecting them. It's like, I understand those are most pressing to you, but the purpose of this is to focus on long-term recovery. So I think there might be, I don't know if the communities,
Okay.
I don't know if they're still having regular meetings up north and out in Medical Lake on kind of the here and now stuff.
I don't think they are, or if they are, I'm not getting those invites anymore.
As
Yeah,
part
it
of the
seemed-
recovery group.
So when the long-term recovery group is like, no, we're not here to talk about those issues, it's like, well, what forum exists now for these types of questions? Because this long-term recovery group is what sort of come in as, this is what all the meetings will be about now. But yeah, there's questions that aren't long-term related that still need answered. So it kind of, there's sort of a disconnect there on.
Does it make any sense, just throwing this out as an idea, what would happen if the county threw a meeting both up north and out of Medical Lake, and we had staff there, we could have staff at Clean Air, we could have staff at here, maybe the health district and stuff, to be able to answer these questions all at one time? I mean, would that make sense?
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise, we're gonna get
I think
inundated
people
with
know.
phone calls forever and a day.
I think you should reach out to Shelley. I don't know, we had to just talk about the
We
systems.
can have next week.
Have,
Be a separate conversation.
well, try to have Shelley at that meeting too.
Yeah.
And so
Oh,
people there can ask questions.
That's the thing, we're not hearing, I've talked to Chandra, talked to others, and we're not hearing a lot on the needs for temporary housing assistance.
Yeah.
So something is taking care of that right now, but I don't know if that means.
It's Red Cross.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
But I don't know when that, if 90 days is when it ends and then the flood's gonna come.
So has just kind of, has anybody put pen to paper to find out what this is gonna cost to recover? Just for homes, just for rebuilding the homes, 366 homes, 400,000 apiece, it's $146 million. And that's assuming that everybody just builds the average home, and some of those folks on the lakes are gonna be very much above 400,000 to rebuild. So we're looking at $150 million of construction to be able to restore these folks to what they had before. And that's a Herculean number to try and take
Qualify
on.
for 13.7 million of public assistance.
Is that what?
We can't even qualify for,
Yeah,
we don't even meet the thresholds
I
for
know.
the 13.7 million in
assistance.
public assistance.
Yeah, and most of the state can kick in is 1.25 million? Seriously? Because think about, and that's not including sales tax revenue that'll come to the state out of just the rebuild. So, just thought I'd throw that out.
It does sound like we need to have Chandra come back in and give an overview of that 1.25 and whether there's any board actions that are needed to direct some dollars so that the funds are then there's known how to deploy the dollars.
Yeah.
So, but then we're not gonna get reimbursed for any of the additional costs of all the overtime and all of that for the sheriff's department.
Those are, because that's being handled through the mitigation, which is the FMAG grant, FMAG dollars.
So it'd be good for her to come in and just kind of explain all of that.
And we also believe, Kyle had posed this question, we also believe that our mitigation for impacted trees in the right of way, or trees that could fall into the right of way would also likely be under that as well. We've got to truth test that a little bit, but I believe that's something that can be covered.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was out there this last weekend and noticed that there were some tree companies that are starting to take down the trees, and they had these huge chippers that they were doing, because you can't send the trees to a mill, and you can't you can't leave them standing, you can't send them to a mill. So what do you do with them even when you drop them? And so what they were doing is they're chipping these things up, and I'm assuming they're gonna use it as hog fuel for Kettle Falls, or the plant up there, or some I don't know of any other facility that will burn the chips, and you can't use it for, as I understand it, you can't use it for mulch and stuff, so it's gotta be disposed of.
Some of the mills can take it, because I know after ours, we had a logger come. And you gotta get them quickly.
Window of time.
Gotta get them quickly, but there's.
But, because our guy we had however our setup was, but he made a lot of money off of it.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is, I recall the same thing, but it's a period of time. If you don't get to them quick enough, then they will lose their marketable value.
But the guy, when the day of the fire, and I asked the question, DNR, what are you gonna do with all these trees, afterwards? And he said, well, we'll end up chipping them, or we'll end up, and I said, are they all gonna come down? He said, they're all gonna get down. And I thought, so you're gonna take it to a mill? And he said, no, they're not structurally sound, because they've been damaged by the heat. And the heat reduces the moisture content in the wood, which makes them structurally insufficient. I don't know. It's just, it's interesting.
Yeah, I know our logger, was able to
get it.
to do it.
Yeah,
But then we have the Dishman Hills who didn't want to do anything,
yeah,
because partly it's the bark beetles that come in that
Yep.
can destroy a forest.
Yep.
But, which was why ours came down very quickly. Because, and I can tell you, it's like as soon as that happened, you could just hear this, it was just like a horrible sound.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I know you can, but it has to be fairly quickly.
yeah.
And,
I believe it's a combination of both, because there are a good variety of those trees, at least up north, that we saw that were blackened.
Blackened.
I think it destroyed those trees. So as opposed to if there's canopy still on part of a canopy, but it's not savable, there's probably some market value.
Maybe that's the defining criteria between whether it can be or not, because typically a tree that's in a fire, the moisture content in the wood drops below 19%. The minute it drops below 19%, the structural integrity of the wood is gone and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
an interesting experience.
because we didn't, ours were burnt.
Yeah, I know.
We didn't have anything
I remember.
left, yeah. So, but he was able to
Interesting. Okay.
work the deal.
Work the deal.
But I don't know what they're being used for them, but I know he was able to
Get the money. Okay. So can we talk about maybe putting together a group for Josh up north and for Medical Lake and get it advertised and stuff, and just start to be able to be out there on the front line to share with these people, you gotta do this and this and this and this. Here's what the county's set up to do.
And let me check with Chandra to see if she still is having any ongoing meetings or
Okay.
involvement with them, because maybe there's something we just piggyback on.
Or, sure.
Or
sure.
do we have to set something up to do?
Yeah.
And she was there on Thursday to hear, a lot of these people have a lot of questions that aren't long-term
Yeah.
recovery group, relevant, but they're more, but
She's got a lot of good insights as to what the questions are that people are asking, what the needs are. So I think she'll be very helpful in that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that'd be great for you guys to
Yeah.
do that.
And
Okay.
I'd be happy to be there. I'm sure Josh would be too. You bet.
Okay, so any other miscellaneous, because you have an executive session, you said?
executive session.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other miscellaneous? Okay, so executive sessions.
Any potential litigation,
And who and how long?
it could be the whole family. Not important. Or it can be just us.
And how long?
I'm 10 minutes.
Nothing from me.
Okay.
One is well under pending and potential litigation. RCW 4230, 110-1I, to include the commissioners, myself, Chris Anderson, Chris Davis, Pat Nichols, Jesse Ferrari, and Beth O'Keefe. That one, I'm gonna say 30. Who's gonna double it? If I say an hour, are you gonna,
Okay,
and then no actions, no action.
No action.
no action. So we anticipate to go into executive session. Maybe we'll do Al's first.
And we do need to make a record of who's gonna be in on that one.
Yes, no, I figured we'd wait till I knew who was gonna be in this one before I came back to Commissioner French to say who was actually gonna be in there. Okay, so we'll do yours first. So do you just want it to be the commissioners and our CEO and legal counsel?
Yeah, why don't we just limit it to that for right now?
And then
That'd
we'll
be great.
add in the others?
Yeah.
And we don't need our PIO or anything? Okay. Okay,
I need to add Pat Bell to the executive session I announced.
okay. So yours is just the commissioners, ours two civil and Scott.
Yep.
Yours is now the commissioners, Hugh and Chris.
Yep.
Pat
Chris.
Bell.
Chris Davis, Jesse, Kat Nichols, Jesse Ferrari, and Beth O'Keefe.
Okay. There we go. No action is anticipated, so we're gonna meet for 10 minutes first before we have you guys come back in, we'll let you know. It is 10:56, we will be going into executive session for approximately 40 minutes. We will conclude our meeting at the end of that 40 minutes, and if we extend, we'll let you know. No action is expected to be taken, and we will see everybody back at the 2 o'clock legislative meeting. Thank you.